In another viewer submission, I was contacted late Friday night by a viewer slash reporter who wanted to know about a particular copyright decision. And I came across an aspect of copyright law, a section of copyright law that I was unaware of. You might think that lawyers just spend their days reading through the codification of the laws, like Section 1, definitions, Section 2, exclusive rights, Section 3, that is not usually how it works. Occasionally, there's a section that goes unnoticed because we just don't encounter it very often. And indeed, I tried to research this section using my legal research system and couldn't find any other cases on this particular section, which is Section 111A5 of copyright law. You're going to see it discussed in a moment, so I'm not going to go over it right now. But it says limitations on exclusive rights, secondary transmissions of broadcast programming by cable. Well, what would limitations on exclusive rights be? Section 106 is the list of exclusive rights: the right to prevent copies, the right to control derivatives, the right to control performances. Those are the exclusive rights of copyright owners. And then this says secondary transmission of broadcast programming by cable, which would mean broadcast is over-the-air programming, and retransmission or secondary transmission would be retransmission, in this case by cable, which seems to be any wire, not just cable wires, not just RG6 coax, quad shield. That's not the only cable. Just because a company might be a cell phone company doesn't mean that they can't be a cable company as well. Just because something is transmitted over internet wires doesn't mean it can't also be considered by cable. So the short version of this is that the Locast rebroadcasting service shut down because of this copyright law and their misinterpretation of it, according to the judge. There's some controversy here. You can make your own decision as to whether they misinterpreted the copyright law or whether the judge misinterpreted the copyright law. But here is ABC, Disney, Fox, CBS, Fox, NBC, Universal, and Open for Business suing David R. Goodfriend and Sports Fan Coalition, Inc. Plaintiffs seek partial summary judgment dismissing the defense that Locast internet service is exempt from copyright according to 111A5, which again we'll go over in a moment. Defendants Locast move for summary judgment on the same issue, seeking a finding that 111A5 does grant them a statutory exemption from copyright law. Defendant nonprofit organization Sports Fans Coalition, New York, SFCNY, operates the Locast service, which captures over-the-air broadcast signals and retransmits them over the internet. This is key. You're not allowed to capture over-the-air broadcast signals and retransmit them over the internet. That's copyright infringement, unless there's an exception, which there is, 111A5. They rebroadcast, enabling viewers to stream live television on their preferred internet-connected viewing devices. The signals include copyrighted transmissions from plaintiffs' broadcast stations. Locast has not paid for a license or obtained plaintiffs' consent to retransmit those programs. Defendant Goodfriend founded SFCNY in 2017. According to Goodfriend, the organization was founded and Locast was created in order to provide Americans free access to local, free television, which, for technical and geographic reasons, they are unable to access without commercial pay TV services provided by multi-channel video programming distributors, MVPDSs, or what we just know as cable. So you pay for your TV service, but you have to buy a package. You can't buy channels a la carte. So you end up paying somewhere between about $30 or $40 a month minimum, upwards of $120, $150 a month if you want access to the first tier of premium channels like the Discovery Channel. At least that was my problem when I was a subscriber, or maybe you want the sports package, or you want some premium TV like HBO or Cinemax or Stars or whatever. So these people couldn't access their local television stations because maybe a mountain is in the way, or the signal is too weak, or they're too far away. They would have to subscribe via a pay TV service or an internet-based subscription service like YouTube or Hulu Live. Locast's retransmissions are available online to any registered user in a designated geographic area, even those who can access the original over-the-air signal using television antenna. Locast's recipients have free access to the full repertory of news and entertainment channels, but non-paying users' programming, this is key, is interrupted every 15 minutes. So non-paying users' service is interrupted every 15 minutes, watching a single channel, and they're interrupted by a 15-second video requesting donations. Viewers lose time reacquiring the program. To avoid that interruption in service, users can pay $5 a month for uninterrupted access, called preferred access, to the service, or can request that the service stop displaying the donation requests based on their financial circumstances. I don't know how intrusive that is. I don't know whether it's just a checkbox or if you actually have to prove your inability to pay, but you can request access based on your financial circumstances. Users who choose to pay receive the uninterrupted service for time correlating to the amount of the payment. For example, if the user pays the minimum $5 amount, she receives uninterrupted service for the entire month. If the user pays less, the time period during which she receives uninterrupted service within the month is decreased on a pro rata basis. $1 paid means uninterrupted service for 20% of the month. This is weird. I really haven't heard of a subscription service that prorates its whatever the annoyance is to get you to subscribe. I don't remember what that's called in economics, but whatever is persuading the user to subscribe is somehow you can pay less and you can get less service then. That's interesting. But the judge goes on, the obvious economic fact is that these donations are really a scale of fees for uninterrupted service, and it works. At present, Locast is almost fully funded by payments from users. Besides those payments from Locast recipients, SFCNY also generates income through donations from TV services such as AT&T, promotion and advancement of local opportunities, and Liberty Cable Television of Puerto Rico. Some MVPDSs integrate the Locast application in their own smart TV platforms, and in the event of a channel blackout, which may result from breakdown in retransmission between an MVPD and a broadcast owner, those MVPDSs can direct their customers to the Locast app so that there is no disruption in their live TV service. As of May 2021, Locast captures and retransmits over-the-air signals over the internet that are receivable in 32 designated market areas and are available to viewers this day. I counted them on Wikipedia, and I don't know if this is accurate, but it was 35 on Wikipedia. Plaintiffs bring this suit to bar defendants from operating the Locast service and for statutory damages. In December of 2019, the parties agreed to limit the scope of the litigation to Section 111A5, the exemption which is the sole question before the court on these two motions. Section 111A5 of the Copyright Act sets forth certain limitations on a copyright holder's exclusive rights. It states, certain secondary transmissions are exempted. The secondary transmission of a performance or display of a work embodied in a primary transmission is not an infringement of copyright if the secondary transmission is not made by a cable system, but is made by a governmental body or other nonprofit without any purpose of direct or indirect commercial advantage and without charge to the recipients other than assessments necessary to defray the actual and reasonable costs of maintaining and operating the secondary transmission service. Plaintiffs set forth several arguments that defendants' Locast service does not come within the statutory exemption. For the most part, they present such conflicting characterizations of the facts that they are more suited to a trial than summary judgment. But summary judgment is appropriate with respect to the requirement that defendant's service is conducted without charge to the recipients of the secondary transmission, other than assessments necessary to defray the actual and reasonable costs of maintaining and operating the service. So the judge is already saying that they're not going to grant summary judgment on the Locast service not coming within the statutory exemption. But the judge is going to rule on this one particular thing. Based on the undisputed facts, which is the standard for summary judgment, it is clear that the Locast service is not offered without charges other than those necessary for maintenance and operation. The payments defendants elicit from users are charges assessed on users to avoid constant service interruptions, regardless of whether defendants euphemistically call them recommended donations. Locast users pay the minimum $5 monthly service fee in exchange for month-long uninterrupted service. It is not merely a recurring gift to a charitable cause. It is of no consequence that a number of users employ the service without paying. It still solicits and receives substantial amounts in charges from recipients for its uninterrupted service. In 2020, Locast's total costs were $2.4 million. According to defendants, those costs represent what it costs to operate the Locast service when the Locast service began operating in 16 markets and then expanded to 25 markets. Locast total revenue in 2020 was $4.5 million, comprised of $4.4 million from users and $147,000 from other sources. On those facts, undisputed facts, in 2020, Locast made far more money from user charges than was necessary to defray its costs of maintaining and operating its service. Defendants Locast argue that Locast's funding qualifies for the exemption because payments from users are reinvested in the organization to cover costs of maintaining and operating an expanding system, and the costs of expansion are part of the operation. Defendants aver that contributions from users are essential to the expansion of the service. They argue that disallowing the use of the assessments for that purpose would prevent expansion, which they say was not intended by Congress when granting exemptions. But under the statute, income made from charges to recipients can only be used to defray the actual and reasonable costs of maintaining and operating the service, not of expanding the service into new markets. The argument that 111A5 should not prevent the natural process of expansion misconceives the statutory structure. Retransmissions, which are secondary performances of copyrighted matter, are already penalized, prevented by the copyright law in its main section. Anyone who violates any of the exclusive rights of the copyright owner is an infringer of the copyright or right of the author, as the case may be. Nothing in Section 111 specifies that an expansion of the number of infringing transmissions is exempt from that law, and it is not for a court to infer that Congress really meant to allow them. It would have been simple for Congress to add one word to paragraph 5 to make it read, costs of maintaining, expanding, and operating the secondary transmission service. But expansion is nowhere mentioned, and it is therefore excluded from the short, tightly crafted grant of exemptions. Since proportions of its user payments fund Locast's expansion, its charges exceed those necessary to defray the actual and reasonable costs of maintaining and operating the secondary transmission service, which is the only exemption granted in Section 111A5. Accordingly, defendants' affirmative defense is stricken. So the exemption, the use of the exemption as a defense is stricken. When they say affirmative defense, they mean the defendant is guilty of copyright infringement, except there's an exemption. So now if there's no exception or exemption, then they're back to defendants have committed copyright infringement. And this is really interesting to me. I didn't even know that there was a retransmission exemption in 111A5 for nonprofit organizations. It sounds like the way that a service like Locast would have to operate, and this is not individualized legal advice, this is just me speculating, that if Locast was formed as individual local corporations, each one servicing a market, as opposed to one big company slowly expanding across, or quickly expanding across the US into 35 markets, then that would be much more palatable. And if they changed their revenue model so that the revenue closely matched what they needed to operate, maybe do NPR affiliate style fundraising efforts where you not necessarily interrupt the programming, but you maybe put up a banner on the screen or something that says, we still need to raise $35,000 to pay for this effort. That'd be fine. You can have employees. The employees can make whatever wage is appropriate. You just can't make excess money that is used for expansion. In fact, I'm not even reading this opinion to mean that they can't have any extra money, as long as they're using the extra money to reinvest in the company. As long as they're not using the money to expand their operations beyond any one local market, then it sounds like they're in compliance. Again, though, that's not legal advice, and Locast or other services shouldn't just go start operating and say, Leonard French told me on Lawful Masses. But you'd want to contact your copyright attorney, whoever you use for that sort of thing, and have a full evaluation done. What I can say is that I researched this 111A5 section, and there's very little case law on it. So it's fully possible that an appeals court might disagree if Locast was able to find grounds to appeal and successfully appeal, which is a big deal. I don't expect Locast is just going to go appeal lightly for no reason. They would need to have a meritorious appeal. But it's possible the judge could be wrong because this hasn't been ruled on before. The plain language of the statute does not include the word expansion. Where might they find grounds for appeal? Well, if there's notes of when the legislature was making this exemption, what they meant, maybe you can convince the appeals court that they did mean to include expansion. Or maybe you can use corporate law and identify that expansion is part of operations and doesn't need to be explicitly called out. If the plain language of the statute matches with the language used in corporate economics and accounting, and expansion is part of operations and is not a separate category of accounting, maybe that's a reason to appeal. So this isn't necessarily a dead case. However, Locast was, for lack of a better word, spooked or startled by their loss and immediately shut down operations. Wikipedia says Locast was an American nonprofit streaming television service, similar to Aereo, which operated on a commercial basis with users paying to lease individual antennas placed in nearby warehouses. Aereo was shut down after a copyright lawsuit. On August 31st, 2021, federal judge denied Locast's request for summary judgment. 2 days later, Locast suspended all operations. I have no idea if they'll come back up. I might write a letter to Mr. Goodfriend and ask what his thoughts are. Maybe he'll give us an interview. Probably not a good idea if they were seeking to appeal. They'd want to have all that for the appeal and then maybe talk about it afterwards. But what that means is that it's currently still not entirely legal for any retransmission of over-the-air broadcasts. Maybe if an individual sets it up for themselves, if I capture an over-the-air broadcast and then retransmit it to myself, I don't think anybody would ever know. But the moment that I'm starting to capture it and provide a service to retransmit it to others, especially for a fee and especially for a profit, that is definitely copyright infringement. Now, if you start a nonprofit to rebroadcast local transmissions only to a local geofenced area, and you do correctly use only the revenue for operation and you don't collect more revenue than necessary, you probably do fall under 111A5. If someone was going to do that, they should do it as an LLC or other limited liability company, like an incorporated entity or something like that, in order to protect themselves. Follow the letter of the law. Don't try to make it into something that goes beyond 111A5, and maybe you'll be safer. What bothers me is the chilling effect that rulings like this will have on future kinds of innovation like that. I could see other potential rebroadcasters who want to follow the law but are concerned that they're going to get sued by ABC, Disney, Fox, CBS, Fox, NBC, Universal, and Open for Business, which is like the entire over-the-air broadcast industry. I'm sure that there are other smaller broadcasters, but those are the big three plus Fox. And that's a lot of legal liability to be after you. I'm not sure if the judge will grant large statutory damages in this case. I did see a similar rebroadcasting case where someone had a meritorious argument but just found themselves on the wrong side of the law, and the judge granted $750 in statutory damages, the literal minimum of statutory damages. So maybe that's what will happen to Locast here. I'll be watching this case now and following it to see when it's due for an update. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What do you think of the innovation, the silencing of the innovation, the chilling effect on future innovation? Is this a misuse of copyright law, or is it understandable that someone transmitting their copyrighted material over the broadcast waves can still control redistribution of that broadcast, secondary retransmission? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And thank you for watching. Special thanks to our top supporters in September: John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Eevi, Spirit Bear, Benjamin Hitov, Ugly Grill, Torpedan, ShadowTycho, Earthbound Star, PureMagma, Drew Hart, TechTechPotato, and Eric Tams. You can support Lawful Masses on patreon.com/ljfrench, sponsors.com/law, through YouTube memberships, and through Floatplane subscriptions. Join me for our weekly live production stream on twitch.tv/lawfulmasses on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern US time. I hope everyone has a great week. I love you all. Bye. So here we are, halfway, well, 2/3 of the way through our ride. That's the bridge from Schengen to Pearl over the Moselle. That's Germany on the other side of the bridge. And that's Kaylee.
That's like Pearl over there, Schengen here.
Hi, Kaylee.
Hi.
And this is Leonard.
Hello.
And we are having a nice ride through the vineyards of the Moselle in southeastern Luxembourg.